U.S. President Barack Obama has announced deep new cuts to curb greenhouse gas emissions for the next 15 years. The plan comes as more and more nations are pledging to reduce pollution ahead of the Paris climate talks later this year. CCTV's Jessica Stone joins us live from the White House. And Jessica, how does this build momentum toward Paris?
Well, the White House believes that by announcing its own ambitious set of carbon emissions cuts, that it can inspire other major polluting economies to do the same. And we've already seen major commitments by countries like China, Mexico, and South Korea to cut their carbon emissions. And we've also seen pledges from Brazil and India to take steps to address climate change as well. What is the White House proposing to do? Here's the plan. 32% cuts in emissions by 2030. That is over the levels that were back in 2005. The proposal targets coal-fired power plants primarily because they are the main source of electricity production in the United States. 40% of U.S. power is produced by coal, and they're also the main source of air pollution in the United States. In fact, the U.S. president saying that these cuts are really key to winning the fight against climate change.
It's easy to be cynical and to say climate change is the kind of challenge that's just too big for humanity to solve. I am absolutely convinced that's wrong. We can solve this thing, but we have to get going. It's exactly the kind of challenge that's big enough to remind us that we're all in this together.
And under the plan, states will have until next year to propose their own ways of getting to these targets of cuts in power production. They do have to comply, though, by 2022. And they do need to use more wind and solar to meet their power needs. And that's a big part of the agenda here. The White House wanting to increase the amount of wind and solar power production, and also giving a credit to countries like Germany and China that have pioneered a lot of solar power and wind power production, and also just the tools to do that, Elaine.
Jessica, there's opposition to this plan by industry groups and many political leaders. Not a surprise there. So what are the chances this will simply get tied up in lawsuits?
It's definitely going to go to court, Elaine, and it's also already being threatened by lawmakers, chief among them Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He represents a coal state, the state of Kentucky. He has already said that he's inserted language in a must-pass bill that would block parts of this plan. But the White House is still confident that they can get it through. And as we said at the top there, they also believe that it will give them and other nations momentum to greater climate change commitments in Paris later this year.
All right, Jessica Stone live at the White House.